herd immunity is all about having enough people in the community vaccinated so that disease can't spread. And that's the goal of immunizations. The more people who are immunized, the more protection there is and the less disease will spread in the community. So this game illustrates that for everyone. With this game, you put sticks in, and it's sort of like the kerplunk game that you probably played as a kid. And you want to build that wall of protection in there so that the disease, represented by the balls, can't fall through and infect the other people on the other side.
But for a measles herd immunity, we really need a good 90, maybe 95% of us to be immune. Now that's tall order. In fact, that really behooves all of us to get the vaccine and understand that perhaps up to 5% of us will not respond even after 2 doses.
Ohio State University tied to anti-vaccine movement. No, it's not. Let's scroll down a little bit. I want to show you something here before we keep moving forward. Neither the state of Ohio nor the university require compulsory MMR vaccinations, though it remains unknown if the infected parties were vaccinated or not. Well, actually, we know exactly. Let's keep going here. I'll show you. We're on CBS News. Mumps outbreak at Ohio State climbs to 40 cases. Ooh, look out. That's an outbreak, huh? And look, they show you a big stadium. All right, let's scroll down. I want to show you this. This is pretty cool, though, what they talk about here. Stay with me here. Don't get dizzy. Here we are. Check this out. Recent outbreaks took place in February among students at Fordham University in the Bronx, New York City, and in 2009-2010 in New York City among school-aged children who had mostly been vaccinated, according to officials. In 2006, there was a mumps outbreak among mostly vaccinated college students in the Midwest as well. Let's keep going here. We've got the Lantern. Mumps outbreak at Ohio State, a threat despite vaccinations. Let's roll down here into the article. Rodriguez said those who have received 2 doses of the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine still have 10 to 20% chance of being infected. Rodriguez called the group cases in the outbreak highly vaccinated, meaning most of the people had their vaccinations. Let's keep pushing forward. One more thing. Here we are in the Columbus Dispatch. Outbreaks blamed on vaccine skipping. Now this is kind of strange when you scroll down into the article and you realize that they actually tell you that the people involved are vaccinated, but yet they say we'll get more vaccines. So right here, the mumps vaccine is about 80 to 90% effective, long said, and about 97% of those who have been infected already have been vaccinated.
Happy and healthy.
And so long before Parker ever walked on his own, we were taking steps to help make sure he'd be healthy for life. We knew there'd be boo-boos, bumps, and bad dreams.
We also knew a little love could go a long way, and that we would need a lot of help along the way.
Some of that help came from Parker's doctor. As first-time parents, we worked together with Parker's doctor to do everything possible to keep him healthy. We had so many questions about his development and care.
And protecting Parker from serious diseases was our priority. According to our doctor, that included getting him vaccinated and sticking to the schedule that the CDC sets. Our doctor told us that the American Academy of Pediatrics and the American Academy of Family Physicians also approved the recommended immunization schedule.
Seeing that so many medical professionals were on board made us feel more comfortable following the schedule to protect him from everything from hepatitis B to polio.
And knowing he was protected gave us something to smile about.
Especially since when we took him back for his shots at 4 months, the nurse helped us understand that we were giving Parker the best protection there is from 14 serious diseases before he turns 2 years old. I'll admit we were feeling a little anxious about his shots, but the nurse also explained that we could comfort him by holding him during his shots and swaddling or feeding him right after. So we felt better knowing we could help him feel better.
Thankfully, each time we took him to the doctor, it got a little easier on all of us, and just understanding we were protecting him made us feel better.
Even more so after we heard that kids in the U.S. still get some of these diseases, like whooping cough and measles.
That sounded a little scary, but our doctor reassured us that the immunization schedule is designed the way it is to provide babies protection early in life, before they are likely exposed to life-threatening illnesses. So by keeping Parker on schedule, we were giving him the best possible protection. We also learned that to give Parker that protection, we needed to make sure he got every recommended dose of each vaccine.
And after all the research we did, we learned about some of the diseases that vaccines prevent that we hadn't heard of before we had Parker. Like we didn't know that Hib and pneumococcal disease could cause pneumonia and meningitis.
Even though he's bigger and stronger now that he's a year old, rubella, and chickenpox.
And each time we take Parker to the doctor, we know we're doing the best thing for our child by giving him a healthy start.
More than that, we're not just protecting Parker. We're protecting his friends at school, his cousins who come over on the weekend, and really everyone in our town. Vaccines, it's easier for us to not have to worry quite so much about
hard. One theory being floated is herd immunity. Researchers at Stanford University believe the COVID-19 virus may have come undetected to California last fall. At the time, many residents believed it was just a nasty case of the flu, but it may have been COVID-19, and thousands, perhaps millions of Californians may have been exposed, and apparently they now have immunity.
So we know that when somebody gets sick, or how severe it is, whether they succumb to the illness, is highly contingent on the terrain or, the surrounding details, such as if somebody doesn't have enough vitamin A, measles becomes worse. If their vitamin D is low, they're more likely to get the flu. Certain drugs like Tylenol make it so that when someone is sick, they're more likely to succumb to like pneumonia. Breastfeeding, we know that passes antibodies. If the mother had real immunity, she can pass those antibodies, and during infancy when the baby is not producing their own antibodies. So leaving these details out is highly pseudoscientific, pretending as if vaccination is the only thing that matters. It's such a simplified, dumbed down version, and it's for the uneducated and the faithful believers in scientism. I want to give a quick explanation of real herd immunity, and of course I had to go find this on Reddit because the first 10 or so pages on Google are very pro-vaccination and give no explanation of real herd immunity. The herd immunity theory was originally coined in 1933 by a researcher called Henrich. He had been studying measles patterns in the U.S. between 1900 and 1931, years before any vaccine was ever invented for measles, and observed that epidemics of the illness only occurred when less than 68% of children had developed a natural immunity to it. That was based upon the principle that children build their own immunity after suffering with or being exposed to the disease. Herd immunity was about natural disease processes and had nothing to do with vaccination. If 68% of the population were allowed to build their own natural defenses, there would be no raging epidemic. Later on, vaccinologists adopted the phrase and increased the figure from 68 to 95% with no scientific justification as to why, and then stated that there had to be 95% vaccine coverage to achieve immunity. Essentially, they took Henrich's study and manipulated it to promote their vaccination programs. And so I'm not going to read through the rest, you can if you want, but basically it's a model based off of natural acquired immunity. So when people naturally get an infection, their immune system remembers it for life. So they theorized that about 70% or so of a community, if they got an illness, then the rest, about 30%, were protected. So this explanation says that they don't understand why there's no scientific justification for why scientists today have upped that from 78% to 95%. But I can tell you why. It's because they realized very quickly that far more than 70% of a population had to be vaccinated for these vaccines to work. I mean, you see that they're given all throughout childhood, and then boosters, they just keep adding more to the schedule. Every time they see outbreaks, they realize they need to add more boosters instead of, making a better product, going back to the drawing board, So they went from 68 to 95%, realizing that not only, even if, 100% of the population, and then some doctors will even say that is necessary, but even when that's done, there are going to be non-responders. There are going to be people that just don't produce the antibodies. And then some people produce antibodies, but then they still get the illness when it comes around. Is it really the vaccines that are protecting us? That's the real question. Or are we just not being exposed? Because it seems like when people are exposed, there are outbreaks, even in vaccinated populations.
Natural infections lead to permanent immunity, and we talk specifically about viral infections, right? But then attenuated or inactivated viruses, they don't. They have transient protection, and that also depends on the genetics, right? And so the reason why it is so, or it correlates with that natural infections or infections with natural, even if you just inject natural virus, right? That would generate protective serum titers that stay high and kind of level, at least in mice. But the protective serotiters wane quickly after exposure to attenuated viruses. And there is also considerable genetic variation in the human population and in how it affects the immune response, and it cannot be corrected by boosters. So whoever is low will be low. And the last point is that with mass vaccination, what we are creating is a leaky herd immunity, right? So the infection could just leak through because really only a small fraction of the population are high responders. And because of that, this leaky herd immunity fails to protect those whom it's supposed to protect according to the officials, the infants. But mass vaccination on the other side undermines maternal immunity, which would have provided robust protection if we used it to the full capacity, right? If we didn't just stop with, at 6 months with just placental protection, transplacental protection, we would extend it by breastfeeding. So that's why with vaccination, they keep raising this threshold. They were telling us, okay, maybe it's 70% that we need, then 80, then 90, now we need 100% to ensure herd immunity with vaccination, right? And even with 100%, a few years down the road, you know, those who are low responders will no longer be a part of herd immunity, right? Will no longer contribute to herd immunity. And it's not their fault, and we will see why. The thing is about this, there was a study also that those who were low responders, and they responded very little after the first boost, after the first vaccine, the second vaccine is not going to boost their titers much more. It would be just like here, just a little bit up and back to the background. And why is that? We actually have an explanation. An explanation comes from no one else but Dr. Gregory Poland. Him and the establishment, I guess, are aware that children respond differently to measles vaccine, and some are high responders, some are low responders. And so they hypothesized and confirmed their hypothesis that this correlates with genetic variability. And I guess I'm a low responder because I got measles after only 5 years after my last vaccine. A few curious details that I took from this paper. So this outbreak, it's post-elimination era, so it's an imported outbreak. It was imported by a high school teacher, an adult. He was himself vaccinated against measles in his childhood. So he went on a spring break abroad, and then when he returned, he got sick, he felt sick, but for the first 3 days of his sickness, he was still teaching. And because of that, I guess not realizing that how could that be measles or anything. Measles in the beginning looks like flu, really. I had it, so I know. So probably he didn't realize. So he was teaching, and he infected a lot of high school students, right? And the students then infected the whole community around. So from this one teacher, the mode of transmission, and about more than 600 people in the community got measles. The thing about that community is that it had really high vaccination coverage. So 95% of high school and 97% of the community were vaccine compliant for measles. And there were no pockets, concentrated pockets of unvaccinated groups. We have that sometimes in the United States where there are Amish groups or some religious groups that they live together, they don't want to vaccinate, but that region didn't have that. Doing this vaccination is to protect infants, and it doesn't work.